Well, I'm going to give a tip to some millennials out here. All millennials should own a Harley, and don't go get balked by the price, because what you want to get is somewhere between a 91 and a 1999 Sportster, especially an 883, because it'll run you less on insurance, and you can always modify it later, and it's got less electronic stuff on it. From 91 on, they came out with the 5-speed belt drive. This is an 89. It's got the 4-speed and the chain drive. Still a damn good bike. It originally started out as an 883 with a single seat. First thing I did was add the seat, added the tack, did the pipes, did the carburetor. Then I put an Andrews V4 cam in it. Then I did a 1200 kit. Then later it was rebuilt with S&S rods, balanced for high RPM, 20 over pistons, Baisley high performance valves, high performance ignition, valve springs, and different guides and different stuff in the engine. And it's of course, one of the first things I did was I put the Mustang tank on it, which is 3.8 gallons. But a lot of the ones after 89 had the King Sportster tank, which is about a 3 gallons plus a quarter gallon or a quart reserve. So they got a pretty good range. What's going on today is they're actually causing millennials not to be able to drive because of insurance requirements. And insurance is like getting outrageous. Motorcycle insurance is dirt cheap. One thing I found out recently, I just put that windshield on here probably a month ago. Never had one for the 30-something. How many years I own this bike? 28, 29 years, right? I got it when it was new. So, never had a windshield on it. And I can tell you, just that little windshield has made a marked difference in riding in rain and getting dirt smacked up in your eyes and stuff like that. It's a major difference. I like the mid controls like that, but the highway pegs are good for change of position. I don't really like riding in the forward position though with the highway forward controls. That's my personal preference. But the beauty of a Harley is that despite there's always defects every single year they come out with a bike, there's always something wrong. But, and this is like this with any bike though, it don't matter what the hell it is. But the thing is with Harley, it's not the motor company, it's the machinist and aftermarket people and performance engineers that quickly remedy every problem there is. If there's one problem with the bike, it could be, I don't know, on this bike it was the clutch shell. But I had my clutch shell redone by a machine shop, and the weights don't come off it anymore where it can mess up the charging system. So that was a defect. Actually, be quite honest, you might hear some horror stories, but about certain things on Harley, but anything that's wrong is remedied. Actually, the Sportster is a pretty damn reliable bike though, especially the 5 speeds with the belt drive. The 91 to 99 is personally probably one of the best ones you can buy because they're not that much money. You could probably find one with low mileage, especially an 883. It's easy to convert them over to a 1200, and then you got a bike that's got a lot of torque in it. You can gear it for highway, no problem. You got 5 speeds, it's just plenty. The Harley's got plenty of torque in it. I think the older Evos are better than some of the stuff they got today, but I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. But the thing is, you can get a used Sportster pretty damn cheap, and they're not going to come out with Google motorcycles for quite some time. I don't think. Like they're going to have an automatically driving motorcycle. What they're trying to do is to restrict your freedom of movement. Was what I'm really getting at. I think I'm going to put that up there right in the front at the beginning of this video in words because that's really what they're trying to do. They're trying to make you owned. In other words, oh look, how convenient. You can press a button and freaking drive anywhere you want. You can get drunk and drive home from the bar because it's a self-driving car or whatever. You don't have to waste your time. You could be reading on the way to work or something, But really what they're doing is control your ass, Even like they got now where you can wear, I think IBM's had this for a while, you can wear the thing on your head and it can read your thoughts. So in other words, you can order up, I don't know, some items off the internet just by thinking it. But then again, if they could read your mind, if you're required to read this, you can get charged with thought crimes, for crying out loud. See how much they're going to control you? They're going to control your movement, your mind, your finances, everything. So it's really coming back to the old adage, Harley Davidson, the two-wheeled motorcycle, the Iron Horse, is actually still represents freedom. One thing I didn't like about this bike, which I was cringed at, was the electronic ignition. Although it's been reliable, I actually keep a point set up in it. This can use a 6-cylinder Chevy points and condenser. I keep it in the saddlebag right there, and I got the wire where I can connect it up and put it in there if I need to. The other thing I didn't like was that it didn't have a kickstart. But kickstarts on a Sportster are really kind of a bitch, but I always wanted to have an extra way to get the bike started. You could push to start this bike, but you need kind of a little bit of a hill, especially with this. You could do it with an 883. You could push start an 883 on level ground, but a 1200 with some of the stuff that's in this engine, I need a little bit of a hill. But with the big battery in it, I don't think it cranks. It starts up really big, fast. The big battery's got a lot of cranking power. It's got 320 cold cranking amps. But that's the thing with Harley. You'll see some of these guys that are like millennials talking about, get this Yamaha, get this Suzuki, whatever. Japanese bikes are very good. But I can tell you one thing I don't like about Japanese bikes is that they share the same oil with the transmission and the transmission and the engine. So if you have a problem with the transmission, it could be one little thing. It's like everything goes kabuts. And sure, it's got overhead valves, right, with the chain, but then you got this chain you got to replace every once in a while that could have a problem that you got to split the case halves. Like the Evolution motor can go with some good care, can go 100,000 miles before you even need to do the top end, and you might get a lot more out of the bottom end than 100,000 miles. Depends on how much you beat the crap out of it. I used to beat the shit out of this bike all the time, and I don't do that anymore because it actually gets expensive. And no, it's not moonshine powered, but I like having that on there. Powered by moonshine, 100% high octane red tank fuel, right? But there's a lot more. There's way more you could do to a Harley than you could do to other bikes. It winds up that the total cost of ownership is cheaper. If you buy a new Harley, big bucks. If you buy, I don't know. Depends. The old Evo Sportsters are pretty damn good. They're actually very reliable bikes. And one of the things I used to ride with laugh at this shit. This is a World War I trench coat. It's actually I put a little bit of gray black primer on it to make it darker or something. It's olive drab. Maybe in a camera it doesn't look that dark as I'm shining a light on it. But this sucker, man, it's pretty good because it does block the wind pretty good, despite not having, because it's double-breasted. This thing goes, it folds way the hell over. It's got like a 8-inch overlap in the front, and it works pretty good even when it gets wet because it's wool. The other thing I used to like sometimes wear was the old Marine Corps rain jacket, and it's got a belt on it, like right here, so you could cinch it down in the middle, so it keeps a lot, and it's double overlapped. A lot of times with motorcycle stuff, these are cheap too, man. You can see the eagle on here, and I think this has got the maybe not. I thought maybe it had a USMC. This is a USMC jacket though, but. Sometimes you don't need to get to even the leather stuff or anything. It could be something like this. Some of the leftover vintage, even a field jacket with a liner in it. If you spray it down with a lot of stuff, it stops some of the wind. The field jacket is not really a good windbreaker, but with the liner in it, and also like you can put the liner in the saddlebag. Right, you could be riding around if it gets too cold to put the liner on. But if you have, you spray down the outside of it with like Kiwi waterproofing, it does block a lot of the wind pretty good. It does help it out, and it keeps you from getting wet. So that's another bad jacket to ride because you could get those for about $50, man. And they're not going to rot away like leather or nothing. They're a lot more comfortable in some ways. You can get leather from Leather Up. They got some pretty cheap jackets on there for about 80, 90 bucks. But the bike, the Harley itself, is actually less money overall. And you know, an 883 Sportster, there's so much you could do to this bike. The only thing that's wrong, I'd say, with this bike is that if you are going to go on a trip with two people with gear, there's not enough room. There's enough room for one person with gear. There's enough room for two people to ride for a day trip. But if you're going to be like hauling two people, it's like, where are you going to put stuff on the back of this thing? I mean, I don't know, maybe you could put a couple of big hard side luggage bags on this thing, like out to here or some shit. Maybe that might work. I don't know. But on a long trip, this isn't really, the bike will do it though. Like this one I got geared with, even though it's a 4-speed, I got the 23 tooth sprocket in the front instead of the 21, which actually brings it to, I think it's like 9% more, you know, top end. So, and I'm actually going to be changing out, I just picked it up, the 46 tooth sprocket in the rear, going from the 48. So in other words, what I'm doing, before with stock gearing, the revs at 77 miles an hour would be the same. Excuse me, at stock gearing, the revs at 70 miles an hour would be the same as they would be geared for highway at 77. It's a pretty big difference, actually, or 78, something like that. I forgot what it was. I think it's a 12% difference between changing the two sprockets. I can get away with doing that even on a 4-speed because this motor's been done over. It's a 1220 over. But it's not just that. It's these valves in the cam. I swear to God, this thing has got so much grunt power, even down low, that I got no problem starting out with even with the way it's geared for highway right now. So I can even go more. And they're all really 1-to-1 when you finish up. It's just that if you have a 5-speed, you got it more in between gears. And it came out with the 5-speed Sportster in 1991. But I would recommend, you know, you can get a 5-speed Sportster. I think in 2000, I think they came out with the, you know, one thing I didn't like is they came out with the, you know, the digital speedometer, and I don't know. I like this bike too. I mean, I know this bike. I got the dealer manual for it and all the parts manuals. And it's really, I used to think it had too much electronic shit on it, just with the electronic ignition. But, you know, today I look at it, it is very simple. It's a carburetor. I would stick with a carbureted bike too. I really would. I wouldn't go for no fuel injection, man. No. I didn't even really like the idea behind the electronic ignition, but I put the Screaming Eagle, whatever the hell you call that crap in there, ignition in it, and I changed to an cell coil. And I don't know. It seems to be okay. I never really had a problem with this stupid electronic ignition. So, but me being so old school, I still keep the points in there, like I said, just in case the thing craps out. But, you know, they don't want, what they're really doing is just trying to restrict your freedom of movement, and by pricing vehicles right the hell out of your reach. You know, if you get an older Sportster, say for instance it's all right, so what's, say a 92. 92 is 8 and 18, so it's 26 years old. Probably, I think there's a lot of places where the thing could be registered as an historical vehicle. I don't know if it's got to be 25 years or 30 years, depends on what your state is. And it might not be subject to inspection. That's another thing, too. So, and I think the bike might cost you, I don't know, $2,500 or something. It ain't going to run you that much. You know, this bike, I would never part with this bike because it's not a stock motor, and it looks stock. I mean, it's got the ham can air filter on it. You can't tell nothing. You don't know what's inside of it. But this motor, actually, when it was rebuilt, cost about half the price of a whole new bike. Just that. So, you know, I actually watch this damn. That's the one disadvantage I hate, though, about the bike, is that everywhere you go, you better keep an eye on it, man. For real. And it's the one thing that's not too cool about it. But I have rode in very cold weather. I've rode in lots of rain. I don't like taking it out in the rain all the time, because every time you do that shit, I don't know, it gets crap all over it and stuff. But, you know, I used to. It's not, but, you know, it's not a big deal to take it out in the rain either. So, right now I got to swap out these tires, and I don't want to be taking out in the rain with the older tires on it, but they're probably still okay. But like I said, anything with a Harley, you could freaking modify later. In other words, your initial, like if you get a bike that's an 883, say it's a 1992 or 3 or some shit like that, and it's a 5-speed 883 belt drive, and it's got real low miles on it, right? Just leave it the hell alone, maintain it, and later on, you could do one little thing here and there. You put your tack on it, your back seat, or if it don't have a back seat, you can change whatever. You can put their highway pegs on there. And actually, I did a lot of this. I mean, within a year, this thing was already a 1200 with an Andrews cam, and a carb was rejetted, and it had different pipes on it and a performance ignition. Within less than a year, all that was done from an 883. So, and it had the tack and the back seat and highway pegs and crap. That's how fast I changed everything over, But once I got it to where I wanted it, it's like I haven't really touched it. I put the oil pressure gauge up in the front on the front highway peg on the opposite side. You can see that right down there. See it? I really haven't touched this bike since I got it where it's like I like it, and I like the Sportster because sometimes, it's not a dirt bike, but you could kind of take this in some places where these big ones don't go, man. And sometimes if you got to kind of walk it through a place, you could do it with this one a lot easier than the big ones. Because it weighs like I think dry this bike weighs 465, and then wet it weighs like 500 or something, or maybe with the bags it weighs 540 or something. I don't know, but the bags in the windshield or whatever. But you're not talking 800, 900,000 pounds. Big difference, man. I mean, this bike is big enough to freaking ride on the highway all day, especially with the gearing the way it is. And it's got plenty of torque for just, you can be in any gear. If you're running 2,000 RPMs, that thing's going to pull. Jap bikes don't do that shit, man. This thing pulls from all RPMs. Parts are readily available. The aftermarket is huge. And I said, it's not the company that makes Harley Davidson. It's all the people that are around it afterwards. If Harley starts freaking making their bikes outside the USA, they're going to go under in 2 seconds flat, because what keeps Harley alive is the riders, not the company. It's the riders. The dedication of the riders. And you hear that plane overhead. Anyway, but the thing is great, man. It really is. It's a good bike. And like I said, you're not going to find an aftermarket for other bikes the way this one has. No way in hell. Don't let them fool you.